So what to do? What to do? What to do? So when things are going south and it's only getting worse, how do we start navigating this consciousness car? How do we navigate when we're in a scenario where conversations are difficult or where we can feel, no, this is just a negative spiral now, we're not resolving something? We're going to look at 3 different things. I'm going to talk about dual awareness. We're going to talk about how we switch to that balcony view. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the advanced sage tools we can use when we're in that mode. So we're going to do an exercise, and I'm just going to do it for 60 seconds, actually. When I say go, you're all going to close your eyes. And for 60 seconds, I'm going to ask you to clear your brain of any thoughts whatsoever. You can use your breath as a focus. So breathe in, you're breathing in and out. But I want you to try and clear your head. Have no thoughts in your brain whatsoever for the next 60 seconds. You can close your eyes and you may start. Okay, you can open your eyes. Some of you are nodding off now. Is there anybody in the room that was able to not think about anything for 60 seconds? I just want to know, I haven't found anybody yet. It's not natural. The reason why we do the exercise is I want you to become aware of the fact that you have access to what we call dual awareness. So the constant commentary that comes up and wants to chatter, that's the chimp, right? We constantly look at the world. It sits at the front. The limbic brain is constantly, oh, look at that. Oh, look what that billboard is saying. Oh my goodness, why is he driving like this? Oh, look, this is what we have this constant ability to react to the outer world and our own inner world and feelings all the time. It arises spontaneously. When you observed your thinking and going, oh no, there's another thought coming, and trying to push that thought away, that observation is your prefrontal cortex. We have the ability to observe our own thinking and observe our own feelings. And that is a specific human quality and a specific human power. So when you're in a scenario where you're in a conversation and you're feeling really uncomfortable, or you're feeling unsafe, or you're feeling unhappy, or the other person looks like they're feeling unhappy, being able to engage with that dual awareness, being able to become aware of, hold on, where am I at? Or where is that other person at? And the question you want to ask yourself is, am I in survival mode? Am I in chimp mode right now? Or am I actually in balcony view? And is this other person in survival mode? Or is this other person in balcony view? Just that awareness changes everything already. Because quite often what happens when we're in chimp mode is we feel so self-righteous in what we're experiencing in the present. We are thinking, no, this is what I'm feeling, and this is what is right, and this is what has to happen, and how dare you do that? And you have this extraordinarily powerful emotional feeling, and you forget that that's not the whole you, and not even the brightest part of you. So just becoming aware of, okay, hold on, which mode am I in? And do I really want to engage from that mode? So when I teach teachers, we always often talk, adolescents obviously has got very strong emotional chimps that come out in classroom and on the sports field. And sometimes there's an instinct for your own chimp to want to meet their chimp, right? You bring up the volume, you shout back, you meet them with the same chimp action that's coming towards you, and you never win. Once 2 chimps start wrestling, you're going to always have a loser. You'll never have a win-win situation. Things will always end up getting worse. So the question is then, if you are in an important conversation, and when you are an adult, for example, dealing with a teenager or a child, or you are the doctor dealing with a patient, or you are a teacher dealing with another colleague, it's your responsibility to actually look at, okay, hold on, how do I now change this conversation? And am I able to switch to balcony view? Can I, when I'm at the moment not feeling safe, my adrenaline levels are up, But if I want to manage this position well, I want to be able to access my sage. How do I do that? And I think what we always forget is that survival mode is a physiological reality. So when you are in that grip, you're not actually in your right mind. And you cannot think yourself out of chimp mode. You cannot go, no, I mustn't be like this. And you're actually just criticizing yourself. Like, oh my God, I'm doing it again. I'm going to lose it. That's not going to help, right? So how do you manage your adrenaline? And now I'm going to teach you guys what you're already hopefully teaching all your patients who get anxiety and panic attacks, right? So you all remember this particular cycle. And when we talk to people about anxiety, we tell them about the cycle because we're teaching them about the physiological changes of anxiety, right? So when you're feeling anxious, you're experiencing a threat. I'm going to use the Buddha example here of the first and the second arrow. So say something happens, you open something on Facebook and there's a comment there that just makes you contract, right? Something that's said about you, or so a comment on something that you've said, and you just feel that feeling of anxiety, your survival brain kicks in, you're not feeling safe, your adrenaline levels go up. And remember, you undergo all those physiological changes of the fight-flight system. So your muscles are going tense, your blood pressure is going up. And what happens is your thinking changes and you start having all these thoughts about everything that's wrong, right? The Buddha calls that the second arrow. The first arrow is seeing the post on social media and getting upset. The second arrow is you now thinking about it. How dare they say that? And why did they do that? And what have I done wrong? And why do people always do this to me? And now it's all over social media and this is what's going to happen. All of those other thoughts now create more threat, usually bigger than the first threat, creates more adrenaline, creates more fight, flight, and now you're in that loop. Now we're running around in that loop. Where a panic attack, when we explain this to our patients, this is how you get a panic attack, right? You're feeling anxious, your anxiety builds. Now you start thinking, oh my God, I'm going to have a panic attack and I'm going to have a meltdown and I'm not going to be able to do anything and what people are going to think. That makes you more frightened. And that's how actually you end up getting into a full-blown panic attack. So we teach patients how to manage anxiety. And it's exactly the same way when we want to try and get out of our emotional landscape of anxiety. And there's two levels where you can intervene. So remember, the first level is breaking the feedback cycle. So when our bodies are tense and when we are about to fight things, our body gets a message from the tension in our muscles that we are busy fighting, and it keeps the adrenaline going. If you physically relax your body, relax your shoulders, relax your muscles in your legs, relax the muscles in your arms, your body actually gets a feedback message that the threat is past. And so what happens is your adrenaline gets switched off and you might get more access to the better part of your brain. The other thing you can do, and can quite often do at the same time, is trying to not go down that rabbit hole of those thoughts. So how do I not follow this one thought on top of the others, all these negative thoughts, because they are busy creating that feedback loop. So I'm going to say this again, because it's an important bit. To get from stress mode to creative mode, there's a switch, and you have to switch off the adrenaline. You can either do that by interrupting the feedback cycle, by relaxing the body. And we've got lots of tools we teach our patients, so good old-fashioned relaxation. But you can also have your own, people who do sport, for example, mindfulness, prayer, exercise, all of that. Or you can learn how to quiet the mind and quiet those thoughts. And we quite often like using mindfulness. It's a simple, easy tool to bring the thoughts to rest. So I'm just going to go you through a mindfulness exercise. We're not going to do it in detail now, just from a time point of view. But this is an exercise I actually do with my patients. It's one I've taught my children. It's one we teach in schools. Some of you might have come across it. It's a very simple exercise one can do. And the focus of it is to bring you so strongly into the present that you switch off all these thoughts. And we do it through using the 5 sense organs. So it's called the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we would ask, I would say to my patient, and I write it down for them, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You can do this at home when you're feeling panicked. If you're feeling anxious, take a deep breath and start going through the room wherever you are at and find 5 things you can see and describe it in your own head. So there's a white projector and it's got a blue flashy light on it. And there's my cell phone. It's got a red and black cover. And there's a blue book on that table and it's got a plastic cover. So you find something you describe about 5 different things. You find 4 things you can hear. So we can hear the projector humming. Well, I can. You can hear the cars outside. Might be able to hear your own breathing. 3 things you can touch. Can be your clothes. There's a lovely exercise that Shazad runs with where you actually rub together your forefinger and your thumb until you can actually feel your fingerprints. So if you're quite anxious, it's actually quite hard to do. And the more you get to that point where you can really feel the little grooves on your thumb, it really now brings you in very nicely. 2 things you can smell, usually the back of your mask, you can smell your hand, you can smell an object. And then 1 thing you can taste. So it literally can be taste your finger, which in our world just tastes like alcohol sprays. Or if you have something on your desk that you can put in your mouth, that's great. But every time you do it, you focus on the actual sense impression. And it's quite amazing. By the time you've done it, even when I've done that with patients, you can already feel the whole atmosphere in the room has changed. So we've brought ourselves into the present, we've switched off the adrenaline, and your body starts shifting. So what are the magic words? What do we do now when somebody is trying to manipulate you, or somebody's being critical and negative, or you're trying to build a relationship and that person is just avoiding you? And I think this is what gets interesting when you go out there and you look at a lot of the work around even the difficult patient. They've got these sort of models you can follow. But the problem is there's no one magic solution of how you deal with somebody who's in chimp mode, because it's very context related. So when somebody is behaving in a specific way, they're not feeling safe. And the reasons why they're not feeling safe is usually got to do with vast amounts of factors, most of which has got nothing to do with you. It has to do with who that person is. It has to do with what's going on in their lives. It has to do with something that they've understood. They might have been triggered by something that you're not even aware of. So there's something going on for that person. And therefore, being able to help them and get us all both calmer to get to a better place to actually talk, you have to be able to do the right thing for that person in the right time. And therefore, there's no clever one trick on what you do, but don't worry, before you all despair, there is a sage superpower. There's something you can do and use that's already going to change that conversation. And it's available now to anybody who's in balcony view. You all have this superpower. It's compassion. It's like the movies, hey? Get to the end and it's always fear versus love, and love always wins, right? So what we are trying to do is if we meet somebody who's feeling unsafe, even when they're swearing at you and they are upset with you and they are freaking out, if we can meet them with compassion in that moment and be gracious in our assumptions, everything shifts. So when somebody's in chimp mode, your focus is not to now try and meet that chimp and argue with that chimp and explain things to that chimp and try to avoid that chimp and try and box that chimp. Your focus is just to make that chimp feel a little bit safer again. Doesn't mean you have to agree with the behavior, but how do we restore safety? And accepting the fact that, okay, the person's in chimp mode, it's fine, we all do that, we've all been there. And being generous in your assumptions already makes a huge difference. And then in the conversation, most of what you're going to be doing is active listening and trying to figure out what is the safety issue here? Why is this person not feeling safe? What is going on? And only then can you perhaps start to be able to actually give some input. Once they've actually, that chimp's starting to calm down, once they've been able to explain what's going on, once you're able to start understanding what's going on, now you can start communicating through something we call compassionate communication. And there's lots of different types. So those are your advanced SAGE tools. And we will definitely teach that probably in one of our soft tool sessions. I quite like using appreciative inquiry. And it's a way of how do we make conversations generative and meaningful and positive rather than destructive and negative. I used to run teenage clinics in England, and we had huge posters on our walls, here to listen, not to talk. And that's basically what needs to happen when somebody's in chimp mode. Sometimes you'll be in a scenario where you're feeling so unsafe that there's no ways you're going to get to balcony mode, and there's no ways you're going to be able to respond out of balcony mode. Then you need to get yourself out of that situation until you are ready. The temptation, the amount of damage we can do to our lives and to others when we're in chimp mode can be extraordinary. So my last couple of modes is just to look a little bit at the broader picture of us living in creative mode. And in Shazad and them, they've actually done quite a lot of research on looking at people that are thriving versus people that are literally just surviving and vaguely holding on, or people who are in distress, or people whose lives are falling apart. And what they've found is that people who are thriving, who are happy in their relationships and their work and their life, usually living a large part of their life in creative mode. So you need to have a ratio of at least 3 to 1 in creative mode. Once you're in survival mode too much in the day, your life just feels terrible. And you can imagine if you're in survival mode all the day, you're also making decisions that just makes things worse. So it just feels as if you're in this continuous battle with the world. And interestingly, there's also ratios, for example, when they're looking at marriages, where that ratio is even higher. If you're having interactions with somebody you love, you want very little of those chimps to actually be taking charge in those important conversations. So to be able to live more and more in creative mode, we have to do the work. So you have to make sure during your day, even as a doctor, if you've got a busy OPD, you've got moments where you can switch off that survival part of yourself, relax, have a cup of tea, be able to do maybe exercise, mindfulness, whatever works for you to actually switch that adrenaline off. If you want to take it up a next level, and as you as a doctor really want to develop your capabilities of communicating, is having reflection every week to look at those conversations that was difficult and trying to figure out what happened. You know, if you had a scenario, it all went south, and then later to go, well, what happened? What, I was obviously in chimp mode. Why was I in chimp mode? And why did I respond? And what did I think was going on for the other person? And being able to get some perspective on what was happening. And then those who want to do the real advanced work, and that's the real work of really understanding our chimps, where those chimps come from, what was the safety issues as a kid that made us develop these particular methodologies, how are they serving us and not serving us? And sometimes this is the work people would do with counselors, for example. What I found interesting in Shazad's work is he talks about when we define a mature adult, what does it mean to be a mature adult? And for me, a mature adult also means being able to engage from that balcony view when it matters. We all have chimp moments. You cannot get away from that. When I get home and I'm tired and exhausted, we definitely have a lot about supper or about dirty house, about this or that. We all have moments when we are in chimp mode and have our little moans and groans. That's absolutely fine. But you don't want to use your chimp when you are talking about a really difficult thing going on in your relationship, or your wife's about to leave you, or your husband's about to walk out. Or if you are in a scenario where you're having a really difficult conversation with a colleague, or when you're in a scenario when your kid gets caught for drugs and you get called to the police station. In all of those scenarios, you don't want to bring your chimp to the party. You want to be able to come with your sage and be able to have all the perspective and do all the right and the best things at that time. So my take-home message for this particular part of the talk is for us to become more and more aware of practicing dual awareness. That's actually the only thing we can do, is just to become aware, oh, actually, that was chimp mode, and that's why things went so badly wrong. Or where am I, and also to become aware of when we are in balcony mode. To have a little bit of reflection time every week, learning about ourselves, and to be gracious to ourselves and to others. We're all trying, we all have bad days. I've certainly been working this with years now, and it still feels like there's such a long way to go, where you can really feel you're always engaging from that sage part. But as a human race, we are already developing this extraordinary capacities and being able to do that. So this is my end of this particular section before we go on to the next section. And these are all of some of the great references of people that I've used to create this presentation. Please pass this on to others. For me, this should have been taught at school. It should be part of our basic education as human beings of how do we engage in the life, in the world more from this part of ourselves.